Chapter 1, The Arrival. The Ashford Hotel stood at the edge of a misty town, its once grand facade now cloaked in decay. A thick fog rolled in from the sea, wrapping the building in a shroud of mystery and foreboding. As Margaret stepped out of her car, the chill in the air sent a shiver down her spine. She had come to this desolate place to escape the chaos of her life, seeking solace in the promise of a peaceful retreat. The receptionist, a pale woman with hollow eyes, greeted her with an unsettling smile. "Welcome to the Ashford Hotel. We hope you find your stay enjoyable." The words dripped with an eerie undertone that set Margaret on edge, but she dismissed her unease. Her room, number 217, was on the second floor, adorned with faded floral wallpaper and antique furniture that seemed to have stories of their own. As she settled in, the sun dipped below the horizon, and darkness crept in like a predator stalking its prey. That night, Margaret lay in bed, her mind racing with memories of her recent past, failed relationships and lost opportunities. She longed for a fresh start, but as the wind howled outside, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Just as sleep began to envelop her, a distant sound jolted her awake, a soft tapping, like fingers drumming against the walls. The sound echoed in the silence, rhythmic and haunting. Margaret's heart raced as she glanced at the clock, 2:13 a.m. "Just the old building settling," she murmured to herself, trying to push the fear away. But the tapping grew louder, more insistent, and a cold sweat formed on her brow. She sat up, straining to listen. The noise stopped abruptly, plunging the room into an oppressive silence. A chill crept through the air, and as she turned her head, she saw a shadow flickering in the corner of the room. It was as if a figure was standing just out of sight, the edges indistinct and shrouded in darkness. Heart pounding, she reached for the bedside lamp and turned it on, flooding the room with light. But the figure vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Margaret's breath came in ragged gasps as she forced herself to relax. "It was just a trick of the light," she whispered, but doubt gnawed at her. She pulled the blankets tighter around her, trying to ward off the creeping dread that settled in her chest. Chapter 2, The Unearthly Guest. Morning arrived with a pale light creeping through the window. Margaret felt exhausted, the remnants of a restless night hanging heavy in her mind. After a quick breakfast in the hotel's empty dining room, she decided to explore the grounds. The hotel was sprawling, with hidden nooks and crumbling terraces that hinted at its former grandeur. As she wandered through the dimly lit hallways, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Each creak of the floorboards and rustle of curtains set her on edge. She passed by a door that was slightly ajar, curiosity pulling her closer. The room was dark and dusty, filled with the scent of mildew. Margaret hesitated before stepping inside. The walls were lined with photographs, old black and white images of guests long gone. They stared back at her with haunting expressions, their eyes following her movements. A chill ran down her spine. Suddenly, she felt it, the unmistakable sensation of cold breath on her neck. Startled, she turned, but the room was empty. Heart racing, she backed away, her instincts screaming at her to leave. As she exited, she caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of her eye, a figure in white, standing at the far end of the hallway. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. The figure turned and fled into the shadows, leaving only a whisper in its wake. "Help me!" The voice was faint, almost lost in the echo of the hall. Margaret's heart raced as she chased after the spectre, her footsteps hurried against the worn floor. But when she reached the end of the hallway, there was nothing, only the empty space where the figure had been. Shaken, she stumbled back to her room, locking the door behind her. "I need to get out of here," she thought, her mind racing. But the thought of driving through the foggy night filled her with dread. For now, she had to stay, to find answers. Chapter 3, The History of Ashford. Determined to uncover the secrets of the Ashford Hotel, Margaret returned to the library that afternoon. The room was dim, filled with shelves of dust-covered books and old manuscripts. She rifled through the pages, looking for anything that could explain the hotel's strange occurrences. Her fingers brushed against a leather-bound volume that looked newer than the others. The Ashford Chronicles was embossed on the cover. As she opened the book, a thick layer of dust spilled from its pages, revealing the dark history of the hotel. The Ashford Hotel had once been a glamorous retreat, frequented by society's elite. But it was also home to a series of tragic events, mysterious disappearances and unexplained deaths. As she read on, Margaret learned of a fire that had consumed a wing of the hotel decades ago, claiming the lives of several guests. Their spirits, it was said, remained trapped within the walls, unable to find peace. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she flipped through the pages. Each account was more chilling than the last. There were stories of a woman in white, a ghostly figure who roamed the hallways searching for her lost love. Others spoke of the sounds of children laughing, playing in the shadows, only to vanish when approached. Margaret felt the weight of the hotel's past pressing down on her. The shadows whispered her name, beckoning her deeper into their twisted tale. She needed to know more, to confront whatever haunted these halls. But as the daylight faded, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that the shadows were closing in. Chapter 4, The Confrontation. That evening, as darkness enveloped the hotel, Margaret prepared herself for what lay ahead. She had resolved to confront the presence that haunted her. Armed with a flashlight and her courage, she ventured into the heart of the building, following the chilling whispers that beckoned her forward. The air grew colder as she descended into the basement, a place she hadn't explored yet. The darkness felt thicker here, wrapping around her like a shroud. As she turned the corner, she was met with a long hallway, the faint flickering of lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Help me!" The voice echoed again, clearer this time, reverberating off the stone walls. "Who are you?" Margaret called out, her voice steady despite the dread pooling in her stomach. A figure emerged from the darkness, a woman in a tattered white dress, her face pale and gaunt. "Please," she whispered, reaching out a trembling hand. "You have to help me." Margaret's heart ached as she stepped closer, instinctively wanting to comfort the ghostly figure. "What do you need?" she asked softly. "The fire." The woman's voice was barely a whisper, a breeze slipping through the cracks of time. "They left me behind. I never escaped." The air thickened as a surge of emotions washed over Margaret, sorrow, fear, and an overwhelming sense of loss. "I'll help you. I'll find a way to free you," she promised, her determination ignited. As she spoke, the room seemed to shift. The shadows danced wildly, and the temperature plummeted. The woman's expression changed from fear to desperation. "No! You must leave! They're coming for you!" Margaret hesitated, confusion and fear swirling in her mind. "Who is coming?" she asked, but the words were drowned out by a deafening roar, as if the walls themselves were crying out in agony. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and the room was filled with anguished cries. Margaret felt a force pulling her back, her feet slipping on the cold stone floor. "Run!" The woman screamed, but before Margaret could react, the shadow surged forward, enveloping her in darkness. Chapter 5, The Escape. Margaret stumbled backward, her heart racing as she fought against the oppressive darkness. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices urging her to flee. She turned and ran, her breath coming in sharp gasps as she raced down the hallways, the shadows chasing after her like hungry wolves. "Help me!" the voices cried, blending into a haunting symphony. Margaret's mind raced as she navigated the twisting corridors, the layout of the hotel becoming a labyrinth of terror. The air grew thick with despair, suffocating her as she dashed toward the stairs. Each step felt heavier, the shadows clawing at her heels. She burst through the door to the main floor, but it wasn't over. The walls seemed to close in, and the air crackled with an otherworldly energy. Margaret raced toward the front door, but it wouldn't budge. She pounded against the wood, panic flooding her system. "Let me out!" she screamed, but the darkness pressed in on her, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. Just as despair threatened to consume her, she remembered the stories, the way to free the spirits trapped in the hotel. She had to confront the fire, to acknowledge the past. With renewed determination, she turned back, racing toward the basement. The lights flickered, and the shadows writhed as she descended once more, feeling the weight of the souls trapped within. "Show me!" she yelled into the darkness, her voice echoing. I won't leave you behind!" In an instant, the basement transformed. The walls shimmered, revealing the remnants of the fire that had ravaged the hotel. Flames flickered in ghostly form, illuminating the faces of those who had perished, their eyes pleading for release. Margaret stepped forward, her heart pounding with fear and resolve. "I see you! I'm here for you!" she cried, reaching out to the lost souls. The shadows swirled around her, merging with the flames, and for a moment, everything froze. A wave of light surged through the room, engulfing her in warmth. The anguished cries transformed into whispers of gratitude, and she felt the spirits lifting away, freed from their torment. As the last vestiges of darkness faded, Margaret found herself back in the lobby, the hotel now eerily quiet. The weight of the shadows was gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace. The sun began to rise, casting golden rays through the windows. Margaret took a deep breath, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. As she stepped outside, the morning air was crisp and refreshing. The Ashford Hotel stood behind her, no longer a place of fear, but a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. She knew she would never forget the whispers of the Ashford Hotel, but now they were only memories, echoes of those who had found their way home.